Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley talking to you I'm muscling through a bad microphone. We're going to alternate sources because we got Tony Altimore on. People who have listened to our Illini Guys Sports Spectacular or our Big Sports Radio show realize that he's a consultant, strategic consultant who works with some very large companies and universities in the past and has quite a handle on some of the issues that are going on. And as somebody who wants to learn more about what the private equity entrance into college athletics might mean, why conferences might want them here, I couldn't think of a single person who would be better to talk about that than Tony. Hey, Tony, thanks for coming on.
Glad to be here.
So when the Big Ten says they want to bring in private equity, and we're hearing, that's going to extend the grant and rights stuff till 2046, and it could mean an additional $2 billion infused into the Big Ten. Is that, and people just don't understand what that could mean. Does that mean that the money comes in and it gets dispersed out to the teams or the schools? Does it mean that there's a project they're trying to do? What could it possibly mean?
So there's a lot of questions about this, but this is not sort of like a norm from, at least now I'm basing what I've said off the reporting I've gotten from New York Times, The Athletic, places that I think are reputable. I don't have any inside influence. I haven't seen the PowerPoint decks. I don't know all the details, and we don't know all the details. And the other thing is, remember, for all of you guys listening to this, one of the things the Big Ten is great about, the Big Ten doesn't leak. Big 12 is like a sieve of like a spaghetti colander. Versus the Big Ten, spent months with talking to USC and UCLA, not a peep until the day it happened. So the fact that we have all these details means that the Big Ten probably wanted us to have this. And my guess is it's to get more bidders. But this is not sort of like a normal private equity deal. Like a normal private equity deal would be, I don't know, Ohio State just did this with parking lots. Ohio State sold the rights to run their parking lots for the next 50 years or something to somebody, and they got a whole bunch of money up front, and now they don't have to deal with it.
Yep.
That's sort of a normal sort of private equity deal. What this seems a lot more to me is like the Big Ten's partnership with Fox. Because remember, one of the big things with private equity is what they do normally, this is a normal sort of private equity deal, they go out and borrow a lot of money, they buy something for you for more than it's worth, and then paying very high interest off that and using interest tax shield, so they don't have to pay as much tax benefit, all kinds of stuff. They, raise prices and all that, and they make money for themselves over time. Now, the reason that private equity is usually dumb for universities is that universities are huge. They're bigger scale than the private equity firms usually. And universities can borrow money for way cheaper than a private equity firm can borrow money. So the thing that private equity brings you normally as like a small company are they bring you expertise, they bring you scale, and they bring you access to capital. Universities need none of those, have better of those than the private equity firm. In fact, the university endowments are the type of things that invest in private equity.
Okay.
Universities are the people loaning the money through the private equity firm and making the profits, not the people trying to borrow money. This is where Florida State had its problems. When Florida State was like, somebody told these Florida State guys, and you look at the Florida State people and you look at what they actually do, and it says like, oh, I'm a private equity investor. It's like, no, you're a real estate guy. You're not KKR. You're a real estate guy. And I mean, that's real estate private equity is the whole thing, but it's like, we're not talking about leveraged buyouts here. We're talking about real estate deals. So today, Florida State thought, let's go get a bunch of money. And turned out, oh no, that actually is not how this works. So what the Big Ten is talking about here is bringing on some kind of, and I would guess it's a non-traditional investment of some kind. It's somebody that knows this space, just like they kind of did with Fox, that is going to be a partner for them. And they're talked about creating a new enterprise called a new separate unit called Big Ten Enterprises that is going to be some element of licensing and merchandising and branding. We don't know what that entails. Is that the clothes? Is that, merch? Is that, they say branding? Is that the on-campus stuff? So we don't know what all that includes. But I will tell you that merchandising and branding is something that like universities could do a lot better at.
And it would help a lot with NIL when you're trying to generate dollars from players. If you actually start selling merch the way the WWE does, Now all of a sudden you're cooking with gas.
Well, and here's the other thing is you're not talking about giving away something that you currently make money off of. Because with the thing about the ACC deal, like look at the ACC's long-term TV deal. Whenever you make a long-term deal and you get money up front, this is all priced for the idea that it's like payday loans. You're getting money up front, but like you're going to pay on the back end. And the ACC is like, how would we have known? We're like, oh, because it's called Econ 101. Go to one of your own classes. When you think about that, what I like about this, it's something that, and again, we don't know exactly what it entails. Our impression is it's something that's not like already, it's not like selling your media rights early and then somebody else pools it and does whatever with it. And a lot of schools have a lot of weird stuff, by the way, with their merchandise. So for example, UCLA's is owned by the student government. Okay. Why? Because actually, here's a really funny thing. It's just a really fun thing. A lot of weird things, by the way, from UCLA and Cal date back to this. Athletics actually used to be owned by the student government.
Oh, wow.
And then it created a huge, we're talking about up till the founding of the Pac-12 in the 50s.
Okay.
And then when there was a problem when the University of California wanted to fire the UCLA football coach because he didn't technically work for the university.
He worked for this. Yeah. Okay. I see.
There was a lot of issues. And it used to, because it wasn't a big thing, right? It was like a student club. And all of a sudden now it's a multi-million-dollar business. So there are a lot of legacy sorts of things in there. The brand stuff seems like it's probably an area that the schools could make a lot more money off of. So if you get a partner in there who knows the space, who's a master of that space, they give you a bunch of money up front to whether they pay the money up front or whether it's committed or something like that makes a big difference. And I'll tell you another reason why I think is a huge issue right now for the Big Ten schools.
Okay.
There are two giant crises, actually three giant crises in higher education right now. The first is, and it starts next year, I think is the big year that it starts, is the demographic cliff. Do you know the demographic cliff?
I do not. Why don't you explain that to us?
So we have really good demographics. Like we know how many kids, are coming from now on. The U.S. has a declining birth rate, which is why immigration helps us because we have a declining birth rate, which is an issue. Yep. But when economic times go bad, people are getting laid off. People avoid having kids. One, because like the mothers don't want to take time off, and the families want to make sure things are all set and all that. So when the Great Recession hit in 2008, a whole lot of people didn't have kids that over the country statistically would have. So all those kids they didn't have that they normally would have are not enrolling in college next year. So, and this is why high schools and, around, they've been shrinking and closing and all because there's just this whole batch of kids that were never born. And those kids don't start in school. Now that doesn't affect the Big Ten schools as much. But it means that their standards will probably go down if they want to stay the same size. Now, Penn State, Maryland, Purdue, does anybody else have huge online programs? Those will get creamed, right? Because a lot of people, there won't be as many people to sign up for them. And what will happen is a kid that, a kid that would have gone to Michigan State is going to get into Michigan, and a kid that would have gone to, I don't know, Central is going to go to Michigan State.
Right.
And a kid that would have gone to Saginaw Valley is going to go to Central. And you see, you start this whole great pull down to keep your numbers up. But for some of the schools, like the Big 12 schools, for example, some of them have 95% acceptance rate because that's their mission. That's what they do, right. And they do that very well. Like if that's your mission and your mission is to put kids through school, then admissions rate doesn't matter. But it does mean that you're going to have a lot fewer kids at West Virginia and at Kansas State and Texas Tech. Great schools that are doing really well, but they're just going to have fewer kids. That's going to kick them in the crotch. Now, the other thing with the Big Ten, whatever one's political beliefs are, the federal government has just demolished its infrastructure supporting healthcare research, and the future of American healthcare just is being like torched on fire right now. If you believe in voodoo witch doctors, that's a good thing. If you believe in Big Ten universities, that's a really bad thing, because these schools are hundreds of millions of dollars that pay for research that again, and by the way, that's not like gifts to the school. It's the school is doing the research of America for that. Right. But it's also paying for buildings that now don't have someone paying for it. So the universities are getting kicked in the crotch on that. And then third, there is right now just a federal war on higher education that is illegal. It is immoral. It is unconscionable. And the schools are just sort of being pansies about fighting. Schools are like trying to make deals just to like make it go away. And of course, it doesn't go away because that's not how mob blackmail works. So financially, the Big Ten is just the schools themselves are like, how do we make it for the next 2, maybe 4 years? Until some rationality can be inserted into some of these individuals. And it's not just one individual. There's several knotheads that are against higher education. So it's a bad thing for higher education. And by the way, if you believe in sports, then you need to believe in higher education. You should do whatever you can do to make the madness against higher education stop. But that means that the Big Ten schools need money. Okay. And if they could look at something that could say, hey, you know what we can do? We can make a whole lot more money. We can make a lot of money on this. And you'll get a bunch of it up front. So right now, that probably sounds like a really good idea. Now, we might be like the ACC and be like, we thought that was a good idea. The other thing I like that it does is it talks about extending the grant of rights through 2047, which, by the way, not extending the TV deal.
Right.
It's not an ACC TV deal. It's just you have to sign on to stay in the Big Ten. For this new money, you're going to give away your grant of rights. Now, I've been a little concerned about grants of rights because we saw with Florida State that if you're willing to play dirty, like what Florida State did was embarrassing and unconscionable. Like they were trying to wrongly use sovereign immunity to like just break out of a contract. That is so wrong. But no state court in Florida was going to tell them that. Of course, Florida is run like a mob land anyway. Like an anti-abortion mob. Like if the mob was opposed to abortion, it would be Florida, the way Florida's run. I mean, you saw what they did with Dr. Ono who's supposed to be the new president of the University of Florida. And they just, it's a crazy land. And it's also why I think it would have to not be a crazy land before the Big Ten was interested in adding any members from there. But that's
fair enough.
So when we look at this kind of stuff, like I think the grants of rights have been undermined a little bit. If the state of Ohio really wanted to, Ohio's still a little rational. Do we have any crazy states in the Big Ten? We might have one. Pretend Crazy Land, we'll just call it a Crazy Land state, really wanted to get out of the Big Ten. And they were willing to have their state attorney general like declare war and like, I don't know, pass a state law that said the Big Ten was born in Uzbekistan and has to be deported. Call in ICE to deport Tony Petiti on fake chart.
Right.
Yeah. Now Florida would do that. Like, if I were Jim Phillips, I would not have crossed the border. They'd be like, "What's this I just found in your trunk, Mr. Phillips? 10,000 kilos of cocaine. Who knew?" That they would do something like that. The Big Ten, I don't think any of the schools would do that, but it does keep the schools together, and there's a lot of value in that.
Now, is there any? I'm trying to think of the best way to say it. Is there any other shoe that could fall? And let me give you an extreme example just to stick out in people's mind. Could there be a time when the things aren't going as well and, the athletic director's sitting behind his desk and in comes the private equity people and you're out of here. We're going to have 2 athletic directors that'll run, each of them get half the schools and the Big Ten will save money and become a more profitable Big Ten.
Well, so that's where this is interesting, is because this isn't taking the whole athletic award. This is just that it's just buying like the rights to that one piece. And I'll give you an example of where schools have done this pretty well. Okay. Is with food services. And this is like the whole growth of Sodexo. Sodexo, I forget which private equity firm sponsors it, but it was the idea of like, hey, food services, this is like, you got to do this. You can't grow in this, right? Because like Michigan's not going to just start doing like everybody else's food service.
Right.
And actually, by the way, some places you do have that. Like Lufthansa just started doing everyone else's stuff, and then people are like, you need to just like spin this off. So like Sky Chefs used to just be Lufthansa.
Right.
That stuff can grow out of something. But yeah, so Sodexo just started like we'll come do your food services, and it'll be cheaper for you. It'll be better for you. You still have ultimate flexibility, and we're not going to be like, you say I want chocolate pancakes. People aren't going to be like, no. It's just okay. Well, this is what it costs. Right. So what they've talked about this is just doing it as this Big Ten Enterprises, which is overseen by a board with a representative from each school.
Okay.
Now, where this could become an issue is in 2045, when if Ohio State says, wait, we account for, and they've talked about doing this in an unequal way,
Yep.
which is very un-Big Ten.
And it also has been the death knell for just about every conference that's tried it.
No, it was the life of the Pac-10. So for 50 years, the Pac-10 had unequal revenue.
And then they were gone.
No, and then this guy came in. By the way, when Bob Bowlesby came in from Iowa to Stanford, he was referred to by some of the schools as Big Ten Bob, and that was not a compliment.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to do things in the Big Ten way, and they were like, "That's not our way, actually." And it was not, because the way they worked it. I forget the split. I'm going to make up splits.
Right, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, but it was like the TV money, like half of the TV money went to each school equal, again, a share, and then the other half was based on how many times you were on TV. So if you were on TV a lot, you got more. If you weren't on TV, if you stunk, you didn't get very much. So there is actually a phenomenal model for unequal share working over a very long time when everybody understands what's going on. The Big 12 had troubles because Texas is on a different universe than those other schools. There are only two schools on that universe, by the way, Texas and Cal. Now, Cal's football team is not nearly as good as Texas' football team. I don't know. Maybe they could have beaten Florida. Not usually, but I mean, we're talking about like the Big Ten schools are doing $1 billion of research, $2 billion of research. Texas and Cal are doing like $5 billion when you count their med schools.
Yep.
So it's just they're just on a different scale, a different level, and it wasn't just that like Texas was unequal; it was that Texas was on a different planet. Now, in the Pac-10, there was a weird relationship, probably not healthy emotionally, with the Oregon sort of Johnny-come-lately, but really the five big schools were, USC, UCLA, Stanford, Cal, Washington, Arizona State, and Oregon not far behind. And you just sort of had this whole thing where like they could all kind of glare at each other, and it sort of worked. Like and the Pac-10 also had deals. I don't know if you guys know this or not. The Pac-10 schools all had pairs. So your rival is not just your rival, but they're sort of like your brother. Like you fight like your brother, but like you actually both hate the people down the street way more than you hate your own brother.
Right.
Like USC and UCLA would like they would do things together. Like when they would have committees, it'd be a 6-person committee, and each pair of schools would have one person that was like for that pair. So there are ways that they could sort of do this, and the Pac-10 really made it work. And then when they went to the Pac-12, they got rid of that and they went to equal everything. And that's where it started to fall apart. But I also think that fell apart because there were some people changes, and the USC and UCLA were both sort of like not really a part of a lot of that. And it probably should have been. Like USC should have been a whole lot louder about, oh, we don't like this.
Right. So how has it been so successful for the SEC and the Big Ten to divide things up equivalently, or is it just something that Michigan and Ohio State have always secretly hated?
Well, so for one thing, it always helps when you're number one. So remember that Pac-10 deal where everything went to equal with 12 was the biggest media deal in the history of college sports. It was a huge giant at the time. And everybody else got some giant deals too, because it was actually really more about like the growth of the market. And they were also, by the way, creating their own network, which, by the way, a couple dice rolls of luck a different way, and that would have been hugely successful. It bombed.
Yeah.
But like it was a brilliant idea that bombed because of how it executed and how it turned out with the teams. But it could have been phenomenal. Like if they'd done that 10 years earlier, they would probably like own Disney. Disney would be like a subsidiary of the Pac-10. But the decade that they did it, they also happened to stink. And to poorly execute a bad TV network while you stink is not helpful. If they'd done it the decade before when they had Aaron Rodgers and Pete Carroll and all, it would have been amazing. But yeah, so the big difference is vote and control. Now, one of the other things that made the Pac-10 to the Pac-12 bomb, and this comes to me from a friend of mine who knows these things, who was in these rooms a lot of times, said that the big difference was the 75% voting threshold. So in the pack, they've always had a 75% rule, which means 3 when you're 10, but it means 4 when you're 12. And one of the issues is that it was easier to stop bad ideas when you only needed 3.
Fair enough.
And he tells me that he thinks that is actually the root of all kinds of stuff. Is just, he said there was a whole lot of stuff that was, that USC and UCLA didn't like, or USC and UCLA and Washington didn't like, and now it didn't matter because now you had that vote change made a difference. So with the Big Ten, I think there's always been an understanding, like kind of the role that the Michigan and Ohio State play. There's also been a huge respect for the other schools, but also it's a whole lot easier when you're number 1.
Yeah.
When no one's making more money than you, so you don't have anyone to be jealous of. And that's, by the way, I think that's still the case.
Yes.
Because if say the SEC split in half, and there was like, the Super SEC, and the Super SEC was getting way more money than the Big Ten, now Ohio State, Michigan might feel a little different. Or the LA schools might be like, let's talk about our TV market value to your network, of your carriage rates and all that. So I think being number 1, rising tide floats all boats. Being number 1, like, again, we think about like when you watch game film, right? You won the championship and you didn't play very well, but you won. You're kind of okay with some of the mistakes.
Yeah.
It's good to be number 1.
Yeah. So do you see this rolling out over the course of time, or do you really think like right now the Big Ten broke it, or I'm sorry, let it slip out so that maybe more people come to the table with capital and potentially ideas?
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the other thing is, it does sound like they've done a lot of thinking and structuring of this. They've talked about the board structure, and so there's a lot of thinking going into this, which means it's probably not wasted thinking. The Big 12 fans, and I have a hard time because I know a lot of really smart people who work in the Big 12. Like the people in the athletic departments are awesome. They have some of the dumbest fans on the planet, but they have like the actual people at the schools are awesome. Their alumni are awesome. They're just like, their internet fans are morons. A lot of them, usually a larger percentage of them than normal.
Okay.
Than others are just nuts. And so it's hard to find exactly what the Big 12 was looking to do. I don't know all what they were looking to do, but they were looking at creative solutions too. And I mean, one of the things that they did is they just did a whole thing. They have a new championship, they have a new trophy from a sponsor, and so they're actually doing some good stuff to make money there too. I'm under the impression they looked for dumb money, and by the way, there's a different issue with private equity money. I call it dumb money. Like, who's going to come in and stupidly give you way more money than they should?
Yeah, because I want to be on their list.
Right, we all do. Now, the thing about dumb money is that dumb money often comes with consequences, especially if dumb money is not, if you don't get it all in cash up front, dumb money comes back to haunt you oftentimes for companies. If you can just sell something to somebody stupidly, and just be done with it, it's great. But dumb money can come back to haunt you, which is why dumb money is bad in something like sports, because it's not going to go away. You're not going to go away. You're still there. So I think the idea of maybe the Saudis will give us $1 trillion, and you don't really want that, because that money's not all going to come, or if it does come, it's going to have problems. There's going to be issues, whatever. So you want to avoid dumb money. The Big 12 fans thought they were going to get dumb money. They thought someone was going to be like, oh, you have the stupidest people on the internet. Here is $1 zillion with a Z. And it's actually in pesos. No, who knows? They're weird fans. But that was never going to happen. Right. Now, the Big Ten thing very much could happen. And the Big Ten has supposedly been looking at private equity things for ancillary services, for things that they can't really capitalize on or don't really capitalize on. And that's great. Whenever you can do that is good stuff. There's a lot of things. For example, do you know what Playfly does?
No.
So Playfly is a company, they specialize. And I have friends who deal in pricing stuff. I mean, we're talking they got these supercomputers doing high crazy analytics on price elasticity of demand and all that, optimizing ticket pricing. And one of the things Playfly will do, and this is private equity, is they'll come and say, hey, we want to sell your football tickets. What do you get right now for tickets? Say I get 30 million. Okay. We'll give you 40 million a year. And we sell all your tickets. We set the prices, we do everything. And you don't have to worry about it. Because they're doing all kinds of like, and now by the way, your fans are going to be unhappy because prices are going to go up.
Right.
And there aren't going to be comps, and you're not going to get like, I don't know, dollar beer night, whatever the thing is, because again, they got to make the money.
Right.
But if you're somebody who doesn't really do that, and that's a pain in the neck, and you don't really want a whole team of analytics math people, maybe you're better off just having somebody, just again, like food service, you're better off having Sodexo do it, and getting the money from it.
Right.
Where what you don't want to do is be in a case where you're like the ACC with the ACC's TV deal, where it's 20 years now and you're just not getting enough from it, and it's a problem because everyone else is.
Well, and I just see what private equity has done to like veterinarians, where all of a sudden now the prices have went up phenomenally because even the small independents who haven't sold out, they're like, wow, I can raise my prices this much because of the other places. And then you talk to veterinarians who sold their practice and they have to work there for a year to 3 years and they're just miserable. And so I keep thinking from a private equity standpoint, man, is there some trap door that the Big Ten isn't thinking about?
Well, here's another example. Here's a very college football example. We're getting a lot of money from NBC. So you know what? You're going to play once a year on Peacock. Now, I don't want to be on Peacock. Well, you know what? Guess what? Do you like your football players? Because that's what's paying for it. I mean, that's the trade-off that fans don't realize is that, this stuff comes. I mean, I got really mad at my own beloved alma mater. We played you guys on Big Noon. And here's the thing. Yeah, here's the thing. That is the flagship product of Fox. Lincoln Riley, shut your mouth. The flagship product of Fox is putting you on. You know what you can do? You can wake up early. And it's not that early. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. You have like 7 a.m. morning workouts like a month ago. It's not that hard. And by the way, also, I can tell you, because from work that I've done, I've flown on lots of various types of private equipment, private aircraft, whether it's charter or government flight, stuff like that. It's a wonderful thing. My uncle's a Major League Baseball coach, so we've flown with the team to the All-Star game, and it is a different thing when you have a motor. When, by the way, you get wanded at the ballpark, and the motorcade whisks you onto the tarmac of LaGuardia, and you walk up the little stairs and sit down in the first class seat of the all first class plane, and they bring you snacks while you play on the internet for a couple hours.
Yeah.
It is not terribly painful travel.
Yeah, that is.
Anyway, sorry, that was my rant against.
Hold on, Tony. I got a better rant for you, because the same USC school sent their basketball team to play Illinois in January at 11 a.m. in the morning, and as basketball, a guy who's covering Illinois basketball, I was hopeful that they would be a little sleepy. Unfortunately, they came out and beat Illinois in Champaign at 11 o'clock. So somewhere there's a logical collapse here.
Maybe it has to do with the fact that we don't cover anyone at home either. We don't stop you at home. We don't stop you on the road. We had to make up excuses. But yeah, but I'll tell you, by the way, for anybody listening, let me tell you the reason you keep hearing about travel so much. Because you know who travel does stink for now? Beat reporters. Beat reporters who were so used to had a little tradition of them going to San Francisco. And now they have to find out where Champaign, Illinois is, how they get there, where they're going to stay. Everything's full. You're going to stay, I don't know, you're going to stay somewhere else. Where is that? Is it nice? I don't know, where's everyone else? And so the beat reporters hate this. They're having to learn all these new things. They liked everything. They knew the people. They knew the places. The teams are fine.
Yeah. So it's like IlliniGuys beat reporter Matt Stevens, who's got to go out and figure out Oregon. Now, see, that's the thing. If I was our beat reporter, it'd be great because it's just new cities for me to eat pizza in. So
yeah, I'm somebody who used to travel around the world all alone. I did it all the time, and I really like. Although a friend of mine I used to work for the government, so a friend of mine gave me grief for that. And I was like, I told him, I was like, you should just travel alone. He goes, when did you travel that didn't involve a black passport and the CIA station at the local embassy knowing everything about where you were going to be in case you had any problems, setting up your hotels for you. I was like, yeah, that's true.
Yes.
I did have some help from Uncle Sam.
Yes, well, that's good. That's good. So, any just to kind of wrap it up, is there anything that I didn't cover that you wanted to talk about on this subject? Because it is kind of it's definitely sports, but it's more
The
than
main
sports.
the main thing I would say is keep an eye on it. Know that the schools could really use money. So if it seems like, and by the way, remember this in 10 years or whatever, if the deal seems like it's a little short, there's probably a payday loan aspect to it that the schools really could use money right now.
So they're looking to clear in this 4 to 5 year horizon is where they're looking to figuring that in the long term they can get solutions, but the 4 to 5 year window they need to get through that.
They can get through, yeah. If they can find something to make their lives a lot easier for the next few years, that's worth something in the future. Now, by the way, that could also be on a university CEO level. Like for the CEO of the school to be like, hey, okay, so like in 10 years, we're going to probably have to give you more money than we would have, like strategic planning wise. Like, cool, because you know what? We can really use this money now. Okay. And that's the kind of conversation that university CFOs can have. It's smart. I mean, I'll give you an example. UCLA. No one has talked about this, by the way. You heard about all the athletic debt that UCLA used to have.
Yep.
You remember that South Park where they're like, and it's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they got a new chancellor, and it's gone because it was dumbed in the first place. So when you have smart people leaving the schools, the only thing I would give to folks that's a difference with the Big Ten is that the Big Ten. Hopefully, they won't prove me wrong in this. The Big Ten doesn't usually do dumb things.
Yeah, I agree.
The Big Ten does like really smart things. By the way, the whole idea of when we talk about private equity and scaling and doing things together and all that, the Big Ten has been doing that for 70 years. The BTAA, the Big Ten Academic Alliance, did you guys hear about? It used to be called the CIC. They save each school more money off their shared car rental discounts. So like everybody from the school, I don't know if it's Big Ten, if it's Avis or Hertz, all the Big Ten schools are on the same giant car rental deal negotiated by the Big Ten for all 16 schools or whatever. I think maybe 7. I think Chicago's in that too.
Yeah.
And the difference in what they would normally pay with their own discounts and what they pay by pooling it together is more than the media rights of most athletic conferences.
Wow.
I mean, most athletic conferences don't have very big media rights deals, but still, I mean, with the Summit League, the Horizon, whatever, the Big Ten, the car rental saving. So again, the Big Ten sees things in a big picture way and does things in a really smart way. It's like when we saw all these details, that was my first thing is that when I read all the details, I was like, okay, so they want this out there. They want this out there. I'm seeing board structure elements, like they don't leak that stuff. So I think that it was intentional, probably to get more interest in it, probably to maybe to say to the communities, by the way, we're trying to get, more money off stuff. Because then one other thing to keep an eye on. I think the pay of athletes is going to become an issue in several different ways for public schools, especially. There's going to be some kid who's getting a whole bunch of money who does something stupid or does like some Johnny Manziel stuff or whatever. And that's money that's arguably state money.
Yep.
And that's going to become an issue. So I think stuff like this is going to let them put a wall in between what's state money and what's not. It's going to be a better wall is something I think it will help with, because there will be problems, when a state has problems or when it's, when they got to cut it. West Virginia got rid of the math department, for example. Why? Because if you were going to get a PhD in math, you weren't going to WV. I mean, they still teach math to the kids, but it's not a somebody thinking big thoughts of mathematics. So they got rid of the graduate program in math. People were upset. They were like, "Oh, you're going to think we'll hire our PhDs from Harvard. You're just not going to come here and get that." So, if there is a situation like they have where schools are cutting academic departments and people are mad, and you've got a stinky quarterback who's benched because he's terrible, getting $5 million or something.
Yeah.
That's going to look bad. So I think that this is an important, like a Chinese wall that will be very helpful.
Yeah, I think the NIL payments are probably something that are exciting to general managers of NBA and NFL teams, because it gives them a little bit more insight into what they're potentially drafting, so they don't lose their career on, having that first round pick.
Yeah, well, And then the other thing too with that kind of stuff is circumstances. Circumstances are wacky. And, a million different things can happen for the same kid in a million different places. A different thing would happen in each place. And so you never know. A kid with the same talent can do one thing somewhere else and not some in the so it's hard to really say. And schools make good decisions. And Pac-12's TV deal. What's the line between you roll the dice of a great idea and a terrible idea?
Yeah,
you don't know when you make the deal.
Yeah, it's looking backwards, and that's very easy to do.
I'll give you another example. The worst, most embarrassingly poorly done hiring of a football coach I've ever seen, and I was working for the athletic department at the time, was when the first four or five choices for USC's football coach publicly turned us down. It was awful. And we ended up with some guy with no college experience of any kind who'd washed out very quickly from two NFL teams. But they really liked this guy named Pete Carroll, and so they gave him a shot, even though it was like the worst run coaching hire in history. And it was maybe the best hiring you think you could ever have in the world.
Yeah.
So it's better to be lucky than good.
I think Illinois tries to pull that off, and they picked Tim Beckman, who everybody on the first day was like, well, how did this guy get the job? And when they let him go, we thought the same thing. Tony, it was great to have you on. Thanks for giving us a little bit of insight into what could be being looked at. Where can
Illinois fans, thank you guys for hosting our Trojans. The folks that were there, while they were a little salty, remember the saltiness is about our secondary coverage. It's not about you guys. By the way, everyone that went had a blast, which I grew up in a Big Ten family, so I knew they would have a blast. But they really enjoyed going to the school. It looked like a great game.
Yeah, it was a fun game to cover. And folks, you can see his at TJ Altimore. That's his X handle. And I would tell you, if you enjoy someone who will give you opinions and then give you a slide deck as to why he thinks that way, Tony's one of the best ones. And I have several friends who actually will explain things that are going on in sports by using his slide decks, to which I tell them, look, I follow Tony. I've already seen it.
I seen that. I saw that.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Folks, we will, of course, be back with the Ohio State game. We will be doing our halftime show. We're going to try that from up in the booth. It worked okay last week, when I was up there for USC. We're also going to try the post-game show. I'm sure that'll work better than it did last time because that kind of imploded on us, but we had a good time with it anyway. So if you don't want to listen to the national guys go through a bunch of highlights of teams you don't care about, flip it on to us. We'll be talking about the Illinois-Ohio State game. We might be ecstatic. We might be crying. We just don't know what our emotional state will be, but we will give you all the scoops that we can. We'll have Brad, Ked, and we'll also have Jonathan Kerr, former offensive lineman. Steve Sturm will be on. So we'll have a variety of guys to talk about what they're seeing on the field, and we will try to put some context to it. Until then, folks, go Illini.